right, so this, I'm logged in now as if I'm the district called NARIC demo. This is the district inventory district products page. So for people who use this for their inventory, this was kind of a landing point for them anyway, right? Where they would primarily work with their contracts. Now I know this is for those that are using the SDPC, they're not going to be keeping this part up to date, but some RICs are still utilizing it, so we still have it there. Over to the left, we see our products, and on the right, we see this new section called classification, classify product. So if I was the DPO or the DOT for this district, and I said, oh, I'm going to classify Game Center, I would click in. And this is the questionnaire based on the New York State ITS documentation that that is designed really for all state entities to utilize to help them to classify their data in the categories of, as you see on the left, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So these questions are designed to help us get to either a high, moderate, or low classification rating. And as we go through them, you see there's 8 questions, but at any point, if you elevate all the way up to highly confidential, you can just skip the rest of the questions if you want. So this one, does the information include or contain personal, private, or sensitive info? I'll just put no. And you see it jumped to question 2 of 8. On the left-hand side, you see confidentiality. I'm in the green right now, which means I'm in the low confidentiality setting at this point, and I've done 1 of 8 questions. What impact would an unauthorized access or disclosure of information have on health and safety? Oh, let's say I'll put limited for now. That kept me in the green area. What's the financial impact of unauthorized access or disclosure of information? Oh, let's say I think that could have a serious impact. Okay, now I've went up to yellow, so now I'm in the moderate category. What impact does unauthorized access or disclosure of information have on the institutional mission, which would be education? Would it have an impact on education? I'll just keep going with serious for now. What impact does unauthorized access or disclosure have on public trust? Oh, let's say, well, that could be bad for us. So I put severe. So at that point, it said, okay, this is a highly confidential product that you're using, a highly confidential data asset. I could keep answering questions if I wanted to, but this section now brings up to me asset controls related to confidentiality. And the only reason the asset controls feature comes up is because I've elevated up into the red. I'm highly confidential. I don't have to answer controls if I'm in the green or the yellow. I can, but I don't have to, right? And because as a district, you probably at least have 100 data assets, probably more like 200 or more. You're not going to be able to devote all the time to all the products you want, right? So we at least focus on our highly classified ones. So in confidentiality asset controls, here is access control. And you see when I hover over that, it gives me a little bit more information. Is access to confidential data restricted to only those whose job needs it? So how comfortable do I feel about that question? Yes, no, or unsure? Let's say I feel pretty good about that. Encryption, is data encrypted at motion and at rest? If I have a DPA with a vendor, it's requiring that, so probably yes. User training, are users trained in protecting confidential data? In working with districts, when I was doing this with spreadsheets, I found this was a question that they've sometimes found confusing because they felt like I was asking them how well users were trained on using this product. That is a portion of the question, but really it relates to confidentiality of the data they're in. If they don't know how the product works, certainly they could accidentally expose data. So that's part of the question. But the other part of that question is, do you realize you're working with special ed data and you can't let other people see this, or things of that nature, right? Yes, training effectiveness. Is training effective? So it's one thing to say, my users, we give them maximum training on confidentiality when it comes to this stuff. Is it effective? That's where you start to get questions, right? I'll just say unsure. And none of these answers, as I'm going along, none of these answers have any kind of logic built into them in the sense that they will change your next question or give you a rating. This is really just a holding place for you to measure yourself. And then, is MFA enforced? And I like the hover feature here because it's not are people using MFA? Are some people using MFA? Right? Is it enforced? Does everybody have to use MFA on this product? No. So I've done that. So now I can assert those controls and move forward. When I do that, now I've moved up into integrity, and I'm back to the state questionnaire about classifying. Does the information include medical records? I mean, let me put yes, and we'll see right away. Right? Okay, you're done with the questionnaire. I could keep answering right here. But if it contains medical records, I know that the accuracy or the integrity of that data is paramount, right? It's through the roof. So what are some access controls around integrity? Internal audits. Does anyone other than the primary user check the accuracy of the data periodically? That's a tough question because some of our programs are exclusively used by the nurse or something like that. The idea here is that if somebody puts in wrong data, that somewhere along the line somebody else will say that doesn't look right, and so based on how they feel about that one, we'll say unsure. And process controls, or adequate processes in place to prevent users from compromising the integrity of the system and or data. Is there a process in place and controls in place that will not allow the attendance secretary to accidentally delete all attendance data for the school year? Things like that. Insert controls. And guys, feel free to stop me at any point and ask any questions. And now we move to availability. Is availability of the information essential for emergency response or disaster recovery? I'll say no, just so we get to see some more questions. Information needs to be provided or available as time permits, 1 to 7 days, 24 hours per day, 7 days a week. And sometimes you might fall somewhere in the middle of that. I'm going to say within 1 to 7 days and have it jump me to moderate. Impact to health and safety if the data wasn't available. Financial impact. Impact to the organizational mission. And the final question, public trust. And just so that we get the control questions, I'm going to put severe so that we go up into the red. So for availability, we have some control questions. Backup frequency. Does the frequency of backups adequately support the risk tolerance for data loss? If you just said, for example, it has to be available to me 24/7, but your vendor is only doing backups, or you are only doing backups once a week, that those things don't make sense together, right? A lot of districts might not know the backup frequency because this is not something that's in the DPA they have with the vendor, so they may have to reach out to the vendor and ask. They may put unsure in the meantime and go back and revisit this. Air gap backups. It's one thing to have backups, that's great, but if your backups are on your network, they can be corrupted too. So do you have an air gapped process so that you can get clean backups? And redundancy. Again, same thing. I need this product 24/7, but if my vendor isn't doing frequent backups and have a way to get me back up online if something goes down, that's a problem for me. So does the ability and timeliness of hot swap load balance support the risk tolerance for infrastructure loss? And of course, this might be the district. If the district is hosting this product, do they have redundancy capability? Probably not, unless they're backing up to the RIC and the RIC can do it for them. I'll put no. And then I will assert the controls. And so here is just a review. These are the classifications I came up with. I can put any kind of notes in here that I want to, if I decide to. And I submit. So now I'm inside the product, and you see here the CIA is in red because it's all high. See my answers to the access control questions. If I go back to my district products, I'll see that classification here. And I can always go over here and reclassify a product if I want to. And you'll see that it reset me. I'm just going to put some stuff in here real quick so that we can utilize this on a future screen. But I want to show you where we have red, green, and yellow. I'm going to make integrity yellow. And then I'm going to make availability. Oh, yeah, I'm down here below. It asked me, because I didn't hit red, it didn't give me the access access controls. So would you like to address controls? I can, or I can skip that. And now here, I'm going to make this yellow. And I'm going to skip the controls on that one for now. Again, I can put a summary note. The reason I wanted to show you a difference here is because when everything was red, it did not give me this override option. But now that there's some green and yellow, it does give me the option to say, oh, integrity, I could keep it at low, or I could manually override it. So you might find that as people go through the questionnaire, they may come up with one thing, but they may not agree with what that questionnaire says they're rated at overall in that category, and they could change that there. But I'll keep them as is, and I'll submit. Again, now I'm back inside the product. I see my CIA in the different colors and the controls that I completed. And notice that it does have what I had initially submitted on those controls, because I didn't go back in there and change those. And back out here. Any questions up to this point, guys?
So far, so good.
Excellent. All right. So, I mean, I could keep going with this, but I want to show you now, after a district classifies their products, they have this comparative data. Now, bear in mind that this is a method to compare your district classification with the bulk of other districts' classifications. So initially, at the beginning of this process, now we don't have any data because nobody has actually utilized this yet since we just released it. But hopefully over the next year, as districts start using that, we'll be able to learn from each other. So the way you look at this is that you look at your product, and statewide or across the whole DPICT, across the whole product, how have people rated these products? The percentage that rated them high is 100% because it's only me. The percentage that rated them moderate in availability, 100% there, and 100% in integrity for low. And here is my rating over here. So again, a district might compare themselves here and they might say, wow, I put low in integrity, but I see that 50 other districts put that as high. So I may want to go back and revisit that, right? So it's just a good way to test and check yourself and make sure you're in agreement. But there will be disagreement because not everybody uses every product to its full capacity. One district may be putting medical records in a product where another district's not using it for that purpose, and that may affect classification. So this is going to be a huge asset for school districts, but not in the beginning. It's going to have to wait until we get some people putting in their data. The third screen here is called controls. And this is where I see my assets, Game Center. I see how I classified it. I can't change anything here for that. However, in a future update, we hope to make that changeable here. But what I can do now is I can talk about my controls. And ideally, if you're doing data classification, and as you go through the process, you're going to have some things that you answered unsure, and you're going to want to go back and revisit it. You have some things that you answered no, like you said no for MFA, but you said, okay, I'm going to implement MFA. So you do, and you make the change. So you can just come in here and change things. And then it's, you sure you want to do this? Yes, and it's changed and updated. And all of these changes are logged so that if anybody ever has a question and says, who did that? Who put that there? We can always go back and say, well, on such and such a date, this user changed that. That's it for this aspect of things. There's one more thing I will mention, and I think I will have to get out of my view. Maybe I can do it over here. Yeah, I can do it over here. Okay. So because I'm logged in as a super user, assuming the role of a district, so it looked a little different. But now I'm in here just as me, and I went to my account over here on the right-hand side. We have this two-factor authentication set up. And this is going to be really important moving forward. You know, when it was just inventory and we were putting our inventory out there for everybody to see anyway, it wasn't as important. Now we're going to be putting data in there that says, oh, you know, I don't have MFA on this product, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. So now we are creating a vulnerability if we don't protect that information. And so I'm going to encourage everybody that uses this for data classification to set up a two-factor authentication, and especially for RIC level users, right? Super users who have access to multiple school districts, because if a DPO in one district chooses not to set up MFA and they get compromised, their school's information's compromised, and that's terrible. But it's going to be a lot worse if, like, somebody like me doesn't set it up, and I have access to all the districts in my RIC, and so I get compromised, and so the threat actor now has all the information that's in there for those different school districts. I think that's it, guys. Do you have any questions?
Okay, great overview. Appreciate it as always.
That was great.
Should I stop the recording?
One thing, Keith, before you stop the recording. I do have a question, and just so it's on the recording. My account does not have access to delete all accounts. So when I went in to manage users, but Steve checked and I have the same rights he does. So I guess I'm kind of wondering, is there something I'm missing? Because I can only edit or delete like 3 accounts from ours, but Steve had full access to do all of them. So I couldn't take, so the reason it came up, Dave Scalzo is retired, right? So it's a great, for us, it's a great opportunity to go through the process of removing accounts. So I went to go do that. I cannot remove his account. So I couldn't do anything here. So just wondering if you can go through that, or what rights we need to set for what administrators. Is there something,
Yeah.
is that level need to be requested through you, or is that, you know how I do it with the other side, like we did for the Nest tool, and like, so what's
Yeah.
our process when we need a user and we need this changed, and it's that high level? Same type of thing for here, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I'll be honest with you, like I don't have that level access either. I'm probably more access level like you are, Scott,
Okay.
because the way originally we set things up is there was one user per RIC who was the top level user, and in our RIC, that was Renee. When we did these modifications, we didn't change my access level at all. However, you guys are in a different situation because of Dave. So probably Laura has inherited the highest level. And so if either of you two need access higher than what you have, I would say Laura is probably the first person to go to. And if she's not familiar with it, or if things didn't get switched over, we can go to Troy Web and get that taken care of. But definitely, I think one person in each RIC needs to have the maximum control for their RIC.
By all means, that should always be. But okay.
And it could be two people, but it depends on what you guys want to do. Yeah, I would always err on the side of caution, But the nice thing about our organization, though, is, of course, as you guys know, if Steve holds the keys to the kingdoms in your RIC, and Steve goes out, for a month, and Scott, you need it, you can always reach out to Laura, and we can get things changed.
Yeah. But like I'm going on vacation coming up, so